Hello everyone, welcome to the series of videos on the course Foundations of Mathematics. This is part 6 of the first chapter, Statements and Logic, and the title is Proofs in Mathematics Part 1. The outline of this session is proving statements having existential quantifier, proving statements having universal quantifier, proving implications, proving statements to be equivalent. At the end of this video, you will be able to prove statements having existential quantifier, prove statements having universal quantifier, prove implications, prove statements to be equivalent. Alright, so let's begin. Proofs in Mathematics Part 1. If you see, most of the statements in mathematics are of these two forms. Okay, mostly what we do is we prove statement of the type 1 or type 2 in most of it. So type 1 says for all x in x, x has the property P. That means there is some set X, okay, which is the set of contexts, and there is some property P which is making sense to the elements of X, and for all x in X, X is having the property P. Okay, this is one kind of a statement that you generally prove in mathematics. And one more is there exists X in X such that X has property P. Okay, so these are quite often used in mathematics. First, we will look at the statements of type 1. Now, in 1, sometimes, quite often, the property P that I have here, it's an implication. Okay, you all already know what is an implication. So, if P is an implication, then the statement 1 will look like, supposing P is an implication of the form if Q, then R. Okay, supposing this is statement, I mean the property P, then 1 will be of the form for all x in x, if x has property P, Q, if x has property Q, then x has property R. Okay, and another way of writing this is, we have already seen this in the last few videos. What I will do is, I will collect all the points in X which have property Q. Okay, and I will form this set. And for all X in this set, okay, this has to be uh, X. Okay, for all X in this set, X has property R. That means if X is having property Q, then X is going to have property R. Okay, and if I give some notation to this set, let's say A, so if I call this set as A, okay, then I can write this as for all x in A, X has property R, which is again of type 1. Okay, so even if P is an implication, you can show that this statement can be transformed into a statement of type 1. Okay, so let's look at an example of such a statement. This says all students in a college who are tall are smart. That means for all students in the college, if they are tall, then they are smart. Okay, so the set of context here is set of all students in a college, and properties are being tall and being smart. Okay, so Q and R, supposing they are properties of being tall and being smart respectively, then how will you write this given statement? Using quantifiers. For all x in X, that means for all students in a college, if X has property Q, then X has R. That means if the student is tall, then that student is going to be smart. So what we do here, we will collect all the students in the college who are tall, and we will form one set. Okay, so I will form a set A. So define a set A which consists of all the students in the college who are having property Q. That means they are tall, and I can rewrite this statement as for all x in A, X has property R. Okay, So even if you have a statement of this type, it generally reduces to a statement of type 1, okay, that I have shown in the previous slide. Okay, next, sometimes we come across statements of the type this. There is no x in x, okay, there is no x in x such that there is no x in x for which satisfies property P. That means there does not exist any element in X which satisfies property P. What does it mean? It simply means that if you take any element from the set X, it does not satisfy property P. If it is not satisfying property P, then it will satisfy the property not P, the negation of P. Okay, so this statement is actually equivalent to this. For all x in X, X does not have property P. Okay, and if you want, you can rewrite this as for all x in X, X has property, you can say give some name K, where K is not P. That means X does not have property P, that means X has the property not P. Okay, so again this reduces to a statement of type 1 that I have shown in the first slide of this video. Okay, next, sometimes we come across statements of this type. I have some finite set with me, let's say X, which has elements 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so there are 5 elements in this set. It's a finite set. Now, my statement says for all x in X, okay, for all x in X has a prime divisor. That means for every element in this set, that particular element will have at least one prime divisor. Okay, so how will you prove this statement? So what I can do, this says for all. Okay, so what I can do, because my set X is finite, I can pick up one at a time and show that it is having a prime divisor. So let me do that. Supposing I'll just make a table. Okay, I will take the element X here and the divisor here. Okay, so if I look at the number 2, it has a divisor 2, prime divisor. If I look at the number 3, it has a prime divisor 3. If I look at 4, it has a prime divisor 2. If I look at the number 5, it has a prime divisor 5. And if I look at the number 6, again it is having in fact two prime divisors, 2 and 3. I can list any one because I'm interested in at least one. So I have one prime divisor. That means every element from this set is having a prime divisor. That's what we verified. That means the statement which is given here is valid. It holds true. Okay. Now because X was finite, we could do it this way. Okay, because our set X was finite, we could do it this way. But what if X is this? Supposing I have a set X which consists of all the integers other than plus and minus 1. Okay, I'll collect all the integers other than plus or minus 1. Now if I want to prove this same statement for this set, okay, I cannot pick up one element at a time and I can verify because this is an infinite set. I simply cannot do this. Okay, this set X is a infinite set. Okay, so what we do is, one way is the method of principal induction, okay, which I'll be doing in the upcoming video. One way is principle of mathematical induction. The second way is this. What we do is, whenever a set X is infinite and we want to prove such a statement, we are going to take one arbitrary element in that set X and we will use logical arguments and mathematical facts, and we are going to prove this particular statement, whatever the statement is. That means you're doing it for an arbitrary point in that set, and if you're able to do it, okay, in a proper way, then it will hold for every element in that set X. So that is how you prove such statements when your set of contexts is an infinite set. Okay, supposing I have a set X which is the open interval 0, 1. Okay, and I want to prove for all x in x, x square is strictly less than x. Okay. Now this set, it's an open interval, it's an infinite set. Okay. I cannot pick up one element at a time, and I cannot show that this statement holds true for all the elements. So what I'll do, I'll pick up one element x in x from this. Now because x is lying in this set, I know that x will strictly lie between 0 and 1. Okay. So this implies I will split it into two parts. X is positive and x is less than 1. Now because x is positive, I can multiply x to this inequality on both sides, and because x is positive, the inequality remains the same. That means x square is strictly less than x. So what did we do? We picked up an arbitrary point in the set x and we showed that it is satisfying the given property. That means every element from the set x will have this property, and this statement holds true for this particular set. Okay. So whenever our set x is infinite, we prove such statements in this manner. Now look at this statement. There exists x in x such that x is property P. Okay. So what I have to do now here, to prove such a statement, I have to find one point in the set x which has property P. Okay. So identify x satisfying property P, that is the first thing you do. And we have to give a valid argument in support of existence of such an element. So you have to pick up first, and then you need to prove that that element is actually satisfying this particular property. Okay. So this is statement type 2 that I have shown in the first slide. Let's look at this example. What this says is there is an integer p such that for all integers q, p plus q is equal to q. Okay. So it is of the type 2 that I have shown in the first slide of this video. So first what we need to do is we need to identify one integer, and then we need to give a valid argument saying that for all integers q, p plus q will give you q back. Okay. So I will pick up p equal to 0 and we are done. Okay. There's nothing much to prove here, because if p is 0, then this condition will definitely be true, because p is 0, 0 plus q is going to be q. So we first identified one point and then we showed that it satisfies this property. Okay. One more example is this. This says for all x in R plus, that means for all positive real numbers, there is a real number y which lies between 0 and x. Okay. So I need to show that for every real number positive x, there is a real number y which lies between 0 and x. Okay. So to understand this better, what we will do is we'll draw a number line. Let's say I have a number line, assume this to be straight, and I have the point 0 here, and I'll take a positive real number, let's say x somewhere here. Okay. Now what I have to do is I need to show that there is at least one point between 0 and x which is strictly lying between 0 and x. Okay, so the most natural choice would be you pick up the midpoint of 0 and x. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll find the midpoint of 0 and x, and I'll call it y. Okay, and that is nothing but x by 2. Now x is positive, 2 is also positive, so x by 2 would be positive, and hence y is positive. Okay, so we have identified one point. Now we have to give a valid argument saying that y lies strictly between 0 and x. Okay, although we know it, y should be exactly in between 0 and x, we need a valid argument, okay, in support of this statement. So 0 is less than y, that is y is greater than 0 is already clear from here, because x and 2 both are positive. We need to show that y is strictly less than x. Okay, now y and x are two real numbers, and by law of trichotomy either they are equal, or y is less than x, or y is greater than x. So if y is equal to x, then what is going to happen? Y is nothing but x by 2. That means x by 2 will be equal to x. And if I divide both the sides by x now, I will get half is equal to 1. That's a contradiction. That means x and y cannot be the same. Okay. So second possibility is y is bigger than x. If y is strictly bigger than x, then what is going to happen? Y is nothing but x by 2. Okay, so I have this. And again, if I divide by x on both the sides, that will give me not equal to, sorry, this is greater than. That will give me half is bigger than 1. Again, this is a false statement. We know this. So that's a contradiction. So the only choice for y is to be less than x, and therefore y is strictly less than x, and from this part 0 is less than. Okay, so we picked up a point y and we gave a valid argument saying that y that we picked up lies between 0 and x. Okay, so this is the way of proving statements of the type 2. Next is proving implications. Okay, now if I need to prove an implication, that is a statement S implies a statement T, what we do is we will assume the statement S and we will use logical reasoning and mathematical facts which are already known to arrive at the statement T. Okay, so we are going to assume S and we will use a series of steps to get down to the statement T. Now, direct proofs are based on one fundamental assumption that is made, which says if S implies T and T implies R are true statements, then S implies R is also a true statement. Okay, so what it says, if I have one statement S and this implies one more statement T and this T implies one more statement R, then from here I can conclude that S is going to imply R. Okay, now look at this. Square of an even number is divisible by 4. Okay, that means if you take any uh, even number, its square is going to be 4. So for all integers m, if m is even, then m square is divisible by 4. I can put it in this way. Now I want to prove this. So I will start with one even integer. Let m be an even integer. So m must be of the form 2k for some k in Z. Okay, so m is of the form 2k. So what will be m square? That will be 4k square. That means 4 divides m square, and we have proved a statement. Okay, so we have given a series of logical arguments and mathematical facts to show that the first statement implies the second one. Okay, now sometimes we need to prove that few statements are equivalent. Okay, supposing I have 4 statements with me, S1, S2, S3 and S4, and I want to prove that all these 4 are equivalent. So first thing what you do is you arrange them in a suitable order. Okay, I'll assume that I've already arranged them in some suitable order, and then what we will do is I want to show that these are equivalent. So I will pick up the first one, show that S1 implies S2, S2 implies S3, S3 implies S4, and the last one S4 implies S1 back. Okay, if you do this, you end up showing that all the 4 statements are equivalent. Okay, so even if you have any finite number of statements for that matter, you can use this idea and you can show that all those statements are equivalent. For example, for sets A, B and C, the following are equivalent. Okay, so A is a subset of B, A intersection B is A, and A union B is B. Okay, this we will be proving in the next chapter. Okay, so I will leave this for now. So what we do is we start with 1, we show that 1 implies 2, we show that 2 implies 3, and 3 will again imply 1. Okay, so if you do this, you are showing that all these 3 statements are equivalent to each other. Now sometimes we come across statements of this form: if S then T or R. Okay, so if the statement S is happening, that means if the statement S is true, then either T or R will definitely happen. One of these two will happen. Okay, so when you have such statements, what you do is you assume you assume S first. Okay, you assume S, and you say supposing T is true. Now if T is true, then one of these two statements is true and we are done, and there is nothing to prove in such a case. If T is not true, then you have to prove that R is true. Okay, so this is the idea behind proving such statements. For example, for real numbers x and y, if xy is 0, then either x equal to 0 or y is equal to 0. Okay, I need to prove this. So this is my S, this is T, or this is R. So I will assume S first. So suppose xy equal to 0. Okay, now I will assume the first one here. If x is 0, then there is nothing to prove, right? If x is 0, there is nothing to prove, we are done. If x is not equal to 0, I need to show that the other one, y, is 0. Now if x is not equal to 0, then 1 by x exists and is a real number. Now y can be written as x into y into 1 by x. You multiply and divide by x here, and cancelling of x, sorry, and because xy is 0, that's the assumption here, that will be 0 into 1 by x, and that's 0, so y equal to 0. Okay, so if x is not equal to 0, we have shown that y is equal to 0. Okay, so you can easily prove such statements in this manner. Okay, these are the references that I used. Thank you.